Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. My format is all over the place today. I'm not sure what's going on, but anyway, great to see you all. Hope you had a wonderful weekend and you're ready for some crazy stuff this week. So I want to cover a few stories tonight. What's happening in El Salvador. Remember, there's a guy who was lifted off the streets in the US and he's currently sitting in El Salvadorian gulag. Donald Trump wants to send citizens there as well, it seems. The US UK trade deal, if that's on the cards, what's going to happen with that, and of course what's happening with steel. So let's start off with this first story. This story first of all. Good chance of US UK trade deal, says JD Vance. So if JD Vance says it, well then, you know, what can we make from that? US Vice President JD Vance has said there's a good chance of a trade deal, that a trade deal could be reached with the UK as the dust continues to settle from America's global trade shakeup. We're certainly working very hard with Keir Starmer's government, Vance said in an interview on Monday with the Unheard website, right-wing website, I believe. The global stock market has been rocked by turbulence since the 2nd of April after President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on nearly every country. The unprecedented US trade policy maneuver included a 10% baseline tariff on all imports from the UK, France, and other long-standing trade partners. The UK government sources have suggested that recent talks with the US on a trade deal could have been making good progress. It's understood that any trade deal would focus It's understood that any deal would focus more than just lowering tariffs and cover elements of trade in both goods and services. So I've said before, look, this is any trade deal when it comes to services will be better than any trade deal when it comes to goods, because if we're talking about goods, the US has said on a number of occasions that the UK would have to accept hormone-treated beef, GMO, genetically modified organism products. It would have to accept greater access to the NHS for US companies. And there are some sinister companies operating within Donald Trump's sphere, so it would be very concerning if they were to have access to the NHS and people's data. Now, Wes Streeting has said before that, well, he said some strange things. He said that the data would not be sold off, but if people wanted the data to be sold off, it could be sold off. So people will be consulted if their data is to be accessed by foreign companies. Okay, but how will people know that? And the return of chlorinated chicken, well said, White Bleak. Yes. So this is, of course, a major concern for farming, a major concern for consumers, and it's not going to be something that would benefit ordinary people. I keep saying, when it comes to a trade deal, there are two partners, or at least two partners. And in the case of a US-UK trade deal, who do you think is going to come out better? The US or the UK? Who is stronger in that position? Who is more desperate for a trade deal, the UK or the US? Like when it came to the Brexit trade deals with Australia, New Zealand and Japan, the UK came out worse because it was desperate for a trade deal. It was willing to give away anything. So there's no benefit really when it comes to a trade deal with the US. Now, this is when it comes to products. I don't know when it comes to services. Maybe there's a way for the UK to access the US market when it comes to services. But when it comes to products, it would be terrible. Now, services would, of course, include the NHS. So we'd have to see the details of that. Now, unfortunately, do you remember when the Conservatives were in power? The Conservatives put through measures when they were in power to disallow Parliament access to the details of these trade deals. Now, I don't know if Labour has removed this, if they have repealed this, I don't know. But it's potentially possible that the UK could sign a trade deal with the US, but we would never see it. Parliament would not see it because the laws in place would not allow Parliament to review or criticise, to investigate these trade deals. My replacement mobile is coming from China. I think we get everything really from China, don't we? Talking about mobile phones, here's an interesting story. Burner phones only for EU staff on US trips, Commission says. So it says here, I'm going to cover this a bit more in a video tomorrow, but it says here, European Commission is equipping staff bound for the US with burner phones amid surveillance fears, the Financial Times reported on Monday. New guidance issued by the EU executive, which also advocates the use of stripped down computers on US trips, echoes that for travel to Ukraine or China. Probably not North Korea, because generally you don't go to North Korea. But there you have it. Once again, we'll go back to that. Burner phones only for EU staff. Now, I think it's important to add that there have always been cases of espionage between allies. Okay, the UK spies on the US spies on the UK, the EU spies on the US spies on the EU. This has gone on for decades. But generally, it's not something promoted. Okay, it's not something so out in the open. Palantir already have NHS details, and they're going to use that to their advantage to maximize their profits. Trump's doctor claims that he's fit and healthy. Quite how the doctor had a copy, though, given that there are many loyalists that would have to get past. Yes. It'd be a bit difficult to get in there, wouldn't it? But yeah, Palantir has access to the NHS already, so what they're doing with that data, we'll have to wait and see. But back to this story, burner phones only for EU staff means that the US is no longer considered a friend and ally. Max, the doctor, was paid. Of course he was. He didn't want to be deported to an El Salvadorian, is it El Salvadorian or just Salvadorian gulag? He didn't want to be sent to a gulag. So he said, yes, Donald Trump, you're the fittest president I've ever met. You're the fittest person I've ever met. Maybe he didn't want to go that far. Trump might catch on. So let's just say you're the fittest president I've ever met. Much fitter than Obama, for example, who would go running every day or pretty much every day. If my company sent me to America on a trip, I'd absolutely refuse. There's a real risk that people will be either deported before they're able to pass the security check, or that they will be arrested by ICE or the border police. There's a real risk there, because they'll ask you for your phone, and they'll go through your social media account looking for, obviously, stuff that's anti-Israeli or anti-Trump. Not anti-American, because Donald Trump is anti-American, so it's anti-Trump. Anything that's critical of Donald Trump. This is what happened with a French scientist a couple of weeks back, or a couple of months back, that this individual had arrived in the US for worked, I believe, in a university or in a hospital, and they were refused entry because their phone was confiscated, and the security services found compromising material, it seems, something critical on social media about Donald Trump. Now, who doesn't have something critical on their social media account about Donald Trump? Like, I visited the US over 20 years ago. I loved visiting. It was a beautiful place. Went to California. I've been to Oregon. Wanted to visit New York. I've never been to New York. I wanted to visit New York. And then Donald Trump got back into to the White House. So I think I would love to visit New York in the future, but I think I'll wait until maybe 2030 when Donald Trump has long gone, and hopefully sanity has been restored. But this is extremely damaging to US tourism. Let me see if I can find. There was an article I had seen. Here we go. Let me bring this up. Just about tourism. US sees biggest drop in Australian visitors since COVID as travellers avoid Trump's America. Almost 4,600 fewer people went to the US in March compared to the same time last year, according to government data. 4,600 people fewer. Here we have a graph here. Fewer Australians. I'm not sure if we have data for other countries. Here we go. Don't know if you guys can see this on the screen. Colombia, 32,000 less. Dominican Republic, Germany, Ireland, Spain, Ecuador, South Korea, United Kingdom, France. There have been increases. More people from the Netherlands, Japan, Argentina, Brazil, Taiwan, Israel, and Poland. Not sure why more people from Poland are going to the US. Maybe they see, oh, it's a cheap flight. The cost of flying to the US is, and there are some good deals at the moment. So I'll take my chances. The Poles are willing to take their chances. Casper, great to see you on the stream. Thank you for that comment. My parents are going on holiday to the US soon. While they don't publicly criticize Trump, I'm worried that something will happen regardless. Now, look, I don't want to be alarmist, but I would recommend if you have an old Nokia 3310 or something, that they take that with them. Or if they have a smartphone that doesn't have, a social media account attached to it, I would recommend that they do that, just to be on the safe side, because you don't know. You don't want to get into trouble, and it may not be at the port of entry. It could be, you could be picked up by the police. There's no guarantee that it's not just about at security. At the airport, it could be anywhere. So I think it's important for people keep a low profile. We're talking as if the United States is North Korea. This is how insane things have become. Can you imagine, a year ago talking about, maybe it's not a good idea, maybe it's not safe to go to the United States? It's insane. Also, it's very suitable for time zone differences. A burner phone. It's 1798 Act. On the 20th of this month, just in 5 days' time, there's the possibility that Donald Trump will have imposed martial law. Now, it seems that Donald Trump had asked a number of people in his administration to consider whether martial law should be imposed in order to deal with the situation at the border. And this, of course, would suspend human rights for people, significant rights, civil rights around the US if martial law is imposed. There's also the what is it? There's an act. I forget the name of. There are a number of acts, but it could be the Sedition Act. If that is imposed, it would mean that it's actually worse. So I believe, as far as when it comes to martial law, the control of the police is under the military. So the military take control of the police. While if it's the Sedition Act, it's actually the control goes to the president. So the president has complete control over law enforcement. Law enforcement is under the jurisdiction of the Department of the Interior, I believe. But better have no tats. Yes. So this is related, of course, to a guy who was lifted because he had a Nike symbol as the tattoo on his arm. And the police believed that he was a member of a gang. Nike! There was a guy who was arrested because he had a T-shirt. It was a football T-shirt. No, it was a basketball T-shirt. Good evening, Max. Did everyone see JD Vance's drop the trophy? Yes. Let me see if I can get that a bit. I normally keep the comedy stuff for about halfway through the stream, but maybe we can find the JD Vance drops the trophy. That's quite funny. Let me see if I can bring that up. Okay, I'm not sure what this event was, but this is quite funny. Look, it's probably not his fault because it wasn't put in correctly, it wasn't put together correctly, but it was his fault. Let's just say it was his fault. Vance's hands were covered in slippery eyeliner. So he had just come from, relaxing on the sofa. So, he had spent some time on the sofa. So he had just arrived in his. Look at his face. It's bad enough. What he left on the couch. Left with the couch. Why the hell are they playing Queen? I have no idea. I think it's We Are the Champions. So, just been using the. It's a requirement to give them your password on any social media account. Oh. If you don't give them the password, then you're in trouble. So maybe have a burner account. I don't know. Yes, it's a bit ironic that the Trump, but the Trump administration also play music from the Village People. Okay, so they don't seem to understand the irony of playing music from Freddie Mercury or from Queen or from the Village People, but you need a burner phone. Well, and a burner account, perhaps. If this is what they're going to do. My goodness. Okay, let's move on. JD fans. So what's happening in steel? Well, so we saw this week how the UK, British Steel is in serious trouble. The blast furnaces cannot be switched off because if you switch them off, it's a bit difficult to switch them back on again. It's like that computer in your, the old computer that runs in your office that has never been switched off. You're like, don't switch it off. We don't know if it'll switch back on again. So British Steel is a bit like that. Well, the blast furnaces are a bit like that. And what's happening is it seems the Chinese company who was running it, maybe, I don't know if this is true or not, but allegedly the Chinese company was allowing the company to fail, so allowing Scunthorpe to fail because they were hoping that they would just bring steel in from China. So they would say, look, this steelworks is not working. Let's just bring stuff in from China. And this could have been the goal here. I don't know if this is true or not. We'll have to wait and see. But it would make some sense because China now, with these tariffs on steel and aluminium, or aluminum as they call it in America, this is going to drive down the price of steel, and China is going to end up having to dump steel. It's going to have to get rid of all of this steel. So it would make sense to perhaps flood the market somewhat in the UK, but that's just a speculation, but we'll have to wait and see.
No, that's right. And Fraser's right, and so is Vince right about the costs. It's undoubtedly a big cost, and a lot of that is attributed to the nature of the industry, but also they have massive energy costs. And there are examples, I have to say, of other countries, Germany being one, that subsidises the energy costs for their foundation industries. And this is a foundation industry. There's all types of different types of steel that can be made in all sorts of different types of way. But this particular site, it relies on the traditional way, which is coke and iron ore at the bottom of the furnace, creating what they call is primary steel. And that's infrastructure steel for our rail tracks, for girders, for construction, for big infrastructure projects. And so, the government on Saturday met, I think it's only, 6 times since World War II or something, to see about what they could do. And the reason for that is it does appear that the management in charge, the Chinese management in charge of the site, were playing fast and furious with access to the coking coal to keep this furnace alive. And if that furnace went out and the iron ore at the bottom of it solidified, then that would have possibly created cracks in the furnace, and then we would have been dealing with a pile of bricks on the ground, and never any more shall be said. But so they have put a stay on that. And in some respects, we, under both Labour and Conservative governments, we have seen where contracted companies to do a job for, if you like, the infrastructure of the country, and you can include the rail companies in this, have had to step in when they were going to topple over in order to make sure that the train services kept running.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments here. Coke, she said Coke, where's Gove? Coke, are they mining Gove's nostrils?
And that's happened with a lot of different train companies. It doesn't mean...
Look, steel, particularly this type of steel, needs to be protected. It's a fundamental asset for the country. It should be protected from a national security point of view, because a lot of this actually goes into the making of armor for tanks, for example, and tanks themselves, and battleships, and not battleships, but warships. We don't have battleships anymore, but warships. So if the UK wants to increase its military spending, if it wants to rebuild the armed forces, then it needs access to this type of steel. What's interesting about this as well is what Reform UK have been saying was that, the problem here was, this was run down because of net zero. It was nothing to do with net zero. Net zero is about emissions. This is about whether something is profitable or not. And the Chinese company deemed it no longer profitable. This actually has been going on for some time. It was Jeremy Corbyn back in 2015, I think it was, who raised the problem with Scunthorpe, saying that, look, this is no longer going to work. We need to invest in this. This should be nationalized. It should not be in the hands of private enterprises. Looks at Star Wars helmet. I knew it. He's a fascist. Look. There's Mando is there. Mando is not a fascist. Mando's the good guy. So it's a mixture. Okay. Do we really need the US? I feel our government is lazy. Look, the US is really important when it comes to services. Unicorn and Mando redeemed. The US is really important when it comes to services, and we can't avoid the US. We can't ignore the US, but we need to look at what happened in Canada. Canada is trying to work away from work towards Europe, work with Europe, work with China even. It realizes that it can't deal with Trump. What's the point in having negotiating with Donald Trump if he's going to break that agreement within 24 hours? Look at what's happening with the tariffs. So it's not the way to go. So this is why I think any trade deal with the US from the Starmer point of view is a mistake, unless it's just based on specific services, so financial services or something like that. But then once again, the US is in a stronger position than the UK will be every day of the week. No matter what the situation is, the UK will always be in a weaker position. That is something that I think politicians need to be honest about. There's a real opportunity to be honest about this and say, look, let's talk. We don't even need to talk about farming. We don't even need to talk about the NHS. We just have to be honest. In a negotiation, the bigger country will be in a stronger position generally. And the US wants stuff from the UK. The UK wants stuff from the US. There will be some sort of agreement. But who will be in a better position? The same with the EU and the UK. Post-Brexit, the EU was in a stronger position to extract concessions. It didn't, because it didn't have to in many cases, because it wanted to have a good relationship with the UK. Ignore what the Brexiteers were saying, it was about punishing the UK. But the EU was in a position where it could punish the UK, but it realized, look, there is the situation with Northern Ireland, there is the situation with France. We don't want to punish the UK because it's not really in our interest in the long term. And I keep saying the EU is not like a country. It's not like the US. It's not like China. It's more like a ministry. It's benign. We'd be stronger in the EU, of course. The UK would be in a much stronger position. The pirate has a point. I'm not a pirate. This is a 18th century hat from Revolutionary. But everyone was wearing it back in the day. It's negotiation and stop punching law. Is there some sort of Star Wars rifle in the background? Yes, that's my God, I forgot. DLT 130, I think it is. It's the one that they used in the first movie. I'll just talk a little bit of trivia now for a second. It's the one that they used in the movie where they gave it to Chewbacca. Remember when they were bringing Chewbacca into the prison, and then Chewbacca started shooting at the stuff and shooting at the people? That was the big rifle that they had. So if you remember the movie, the first movie, Star Wars A New Hope, that's that rifle. I may show it off sometime. Great to see you on the stream, Sarah. Let's move on to our next story. No, I already covered that. Sorry. Actually, we're near the time for a break, but let's move on. No, not that. Yes, this is really weird. This is a story. Oh my goodness. There is a new phenomena that the right wing are getting on, a new bandwagon they're jumping on.
We need.
So this is a guy called Douglas Carswell who lives in the United States, lives in Mississippi, I believe, but lives in the United States, and so he's an immigrant in the US, and he's anti-immigration for the UK. Not sure what he's doing in the US as an immigrant, but he lives there. He's an ex-Tory, I think. I think he was the guy who was a Tory who defected to UKIP back in the mid, was it 2015 or whatever it was, and then he won the seat for UKIP. So UKIP had one seat in the House of Commons, and that was Douglas Carswell. And then he left politics, it seems, and moved and immigrated to the US. And now he's commentating on a lot of stuff, but he's pushing this, him and others are pushing this idea of remigration. So let's hear what it's all about.
Remigration. Now, become familiar with the word. Some people will find it shocking, but remigration means removing from the West non-Western people who live here and don't wish to adopt the Western way of life.
So what the hell does that mean? So removing non-Western people who don't want to adopt the Western way of life. Is this just like racism, is it? I don't know. I don't want to put words in this guy's mouth, but what does he mean by non-Western people? Because if somebody moved from, let's say, the Middle East to the UK, and then their children grew up in the UK, are those people Western? What if somebody moves to the UK, starts a business, goes to church every Sunday? Is that person Western? What if they don't go to church? What if they open a business, employ people, pay their taxes, but they're a Muslim? Are they Western people? Like, what is this guy's definition of Western people?
Remigration first.
Remember, this guy is living in the United States as an immigrant. Okay.
Adopt the Western way of life. Remigration, first of all, needs to be applied to those who've entered the country illegally. Now, we have between 1 million and 500,000 people living in Britain illegally.
So there are 1 million people living in the UK illegally? According to what data? See, once again, these people like to describe immigrants as illegal. They like to describe asylum seekers as illegal. So when he talks about 1 million people living in the UK illegally, I don't understand what barometer he's using, what measure he's using.
The United States has shown in the past 3 months, where they've deported about 50,000 people a month, that it is perfectly possible to round up.
No, they haven't deported 50,000 people a month. Once again, what evidence do you have to back up that claim? Just because somebody said it is not evidence. 50,000 people have been deported.
People who are in the country unlawfully and remove them. In the case of the United States, when there was one individual who they tried to return to South Sudan and the government of South Sudan refused to take him, they cancelled all visas from South Sudan. A quick about turn from the government of South Sudan. Britain should take a similar approach. We should...
So we should make enemies with our allies. So I don't know if this is true. See, once again, we don't know if this guy is telling the truth or not. But let's assume for the sake of argument, Carswell for El Salvador 2025. Douglas Unwell. So let's say for the sake of argument, the United States did strong arm a country to send people back to South Sudan. Does South Sudan have a government? I don't know if South Sudan actually has a government, or a government that you can work with. There's a big war going on. Yes. He chose a good example, didn't he? But this whole idea of we're going to use gunship diplomacy to send people. See, there's a huge problem with what Donald Trump is doing and what the Tories had hoped to do when it comes to breaking the law. I think we're going to see in the future a lot of people going to prison over these things. Because Donald Trump is in charge now, so the people around Donald Trump believe they can do whatever the hell they want. And they can for now. But there will come a day of reckoning for these people. There will come a day where these people will have to face a tribunal or face a judge. Because you can break the law, but later on when you have done your business, you've run the, how can I say, your dictatorship has run its course. These things come to an end. Donald Trump will not be president forever. Donald Trump's administration will not be there forever. There will come a time where people who broke the law egregiously, they will face a judge. They will face justice. You will have to have a situation where people will face justice. Because there are people who are destroying people's lives at the moment. They are breaking the law. They are using the US Constitution as toilet paper. And those people will eventually have to answer for that. I don't know when, but it will happen. So the idea of I've mentioned this before when Priti Patel or Suella Braverman was saying what we need to do is we need to instruct the Royal Navy to pick up boats in the Channel and just force them back. And if people die, well, that's the consequences of that's tough. That's collateral damage. And I said, and I've always said, the armed forces will not break the law, or they will try not to break the law, because they are the ones who will face the consequences. This happened to Robespierre, exactly. He went a bit too far, and he got his comeuppance. That's not why I like Robespierre, but it's true. Yes, you will face the guillotine yourself at some stage. So when will Boris pay? Well, Boris will, I hope, will pay eventually. But the armed forces, in particular the Royal Navy, would not turn people back because they are the ones who would face a court martial. They couldn't go along with just, well, I was following orders. That doesn't cut the mustard anymore. I see Donald Trump once again a third time, and the trend the US is moving. I see Donald Trump president again third time. I don't know if he'd be capable of doing that. Like, he's not young and he eats hamburgers every day. I see him handing it over to somebody else. I think I will see somebody groomed over there. I don't see J.D. Vance. I don't see it as J.D. Vance. I see it as somebody else. But somebody will be... See, there's also the risk that Donald Trump will just become a figurehead. And I think that's almost happening at the moment. Look at what happened with Elon Musk. Elon Musk was running the show. Now it seems perhaps this Stephen Miller guy could be running the show. Somebody else is in charge. Donald Trump is just there to nod or just to sign his name. A bit like putting him in the in the driverless train and convincing him that he's actually driving the train. I think there could be a bit of that going on. That Donald Trump doesn't actually know what's going on. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just there as a figurehead. He's told what to say. Not so much what to say, but what he says is not really important, or what he says is aligned with what they want to achieve. The money is in charge. The money is always in charge. DeSantis is not liked, though. See, a problem for the Trump administration, or for the Republican Party, I should say, is that whoever they replace Trump with will have to be like Trump. They'll need somebody who's somewhat charismatic. But I think there's going to be a massive backlash, and I think the Republicans are going to take a massive beating, because, as I keep saying, it's based on whether people feel better off. Do people feel better off going into the next election? Do people feel that things are better than when the last administration were in charge? So Donald Trump is trying to blame a lot of things on Biden at the moment, saying, oh, it's Biden's fault. But remember when the Tories were trying to blame everything on COVID? It worked for a while, but then it eventually ran out, because people... The thing about blaming other people is that will work to a certain extent, but then they'll ask, okay, but what are you doing to improve things? Because if your entire approach is, it's not my fault, but that's not improving my life. And if Donald Trump and his administration are not able to convince people, it's not about actually achieving something, it's about convincing people. And if they can't convince people that they've improved their lives, then they're going to get booted out. And, Liz Truss, she has her own social media platform, I believe, or at least is starting one up. Anyway, guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so let's take a short comedy moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoyed this. This one is good.
As you know, we've been following the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Undocumented migrant from El Salvador, married an American woman, has a kid, living the American dream. Until the Trump administration sent him to an El Salvadorian mega prison by, and I'm quoting the justice.
Hey, what's happening with this video? Sorry, I'll try it again.
As you know, we've been following the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Undocumented migrant from El Salvador, married an American woman, has a kid, living the American dream. Until the Trump administration sent him to an El Salvadorian mega prison by, and I'm quoting the Justice Department here, if I may, is an administrative error. If only there was a convenient and timely way that the prisoner could be brought back to the United States that wouldn't really inconvenience either nation.
President Bukele at the moment flying from El Salvador to Washington, D.C.
What? Saints be praised! Bukele can just give Garcia a ride. You don't even have to give Garcia the middle seat. I'm sure Garcia would just grab the wing and Tom Cruise it over here if he had to. As you know,
sorry about the video glitch. It's not my fault. It's in the original, but I'm not sure what happened there. But anyway, moving on. Oh my goodness. So Donald Trump was asked whether it would be a good idea to send people to El Salvador. Well, people such as American citizens. This is what he had to say.
Could we use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals?
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
He didn't wear a suit. Yes, that was the president from El Salvador. Yeah, there was no question. Did he say thank you? Did he say thank you to the Trump administration for turning his country into a client state? I'm not sure. Homegrown like Trump, exactly. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is making a very good argument for sending Donald Trump to El Salvador because if it's about convicted felons. Well, how many convictions does he have? 34, 35 convictions. Maybe Donald Trump should be going to El Salvador. How about that? He should wear Kid Rock suit. Who's the world's coolest dictator? Kim Jong-un is, I think, the world's coolest dictator. 34. Max, you'll be reappearing on the Sunday brunch at some time. I will indeed. I will pop in from time to time. I promise. Did you see Kid Rock's outfit? No. Was that the one where he was wearing some really weird thing with flags or something like that? That was really weird. It's like, they're criticizing Zelensky for not wearing a suit and tie, and then these crazy people turn up, or the president of El Salvador who wasn't wearing a suit, and yeah, that's perfectly fine. These people are hacks. Hi all in the chat. Hi Max, listening from the start. Been at work. Funds for the work you do. Thank you so much, Alistair. Very kind of you. Great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well tonight. First time catch a live. Love your content. Thank you so much, Nicole. How dare Kid Rock not wear a suit? Yes. Like a cowboy, Evil Knievel clown suit. Just as long as they don't deport Trump to his mom's birthplace. Yes, his mom is from Scotland. I don't remember exactly where in Scotland. Any word on Elon Musk? He seems to be lying low. Yes, he seems to be there's been a bit of a falling out between Trump and Elon Musk, it seems, or at least the Trump administration and Elon Musk, because it's hilarious. So Elon Musk is the type of person who thinks that he's funny when he's not. So you can imagine somebody you work with who thinks that they're funny and they're not. But now imagine this person is always there in every meeting. So it allegedly it's been leaked by people within the Trump administration. They're really pissed off with Elon Musk because he's a real arsehole. and he's really arrogant. So this hasn't worked out very well. So they're trying to distance themselves from him. They're trying to keep him, away from the administration as much as possible. And he's not popular. So some people are seeing him as a drag on Donald Trump or drag on the government. So Elon Musk is extremely unpopular, and they believe that he's dragging the party, so they want to get rid of him or at least sideline him. I think he served his purpose. I don't think we're going to see very much from Elon Musk going forward. He's going to be hanging around a bit, but he got Donald Trump in. He's cutting public services. His department is also pissing off a lot of people, because there was a situation where in the White House, I believe, they tripped a security camera, a security system, and it was one of Elon Musk's goons, I should say, and it pissed off some people at the White House who were saying, like, we have to do our job. We don't want him coming in messing things up. And then there were people complaining to Elon Musk's staff, and then the staff were like saying, well, do as you're told, or shut up, or I'll call Elon. So that's not going down well with very many people, because there are people, remember, not everyone in the Trump administration is evil. They're probably there because they see an opportunity to, get a comfortable job, maybe increase their wages. So they see, here's an opportunity to benefit from the Trump administration. But then they have people like Elon Musk, upsetting the apple cart or firing these people. And while Elon Musk does some stupid shit, the Trump administration will get the blame. And the more stupid crap that Elon Musk does, the more blame will be directed at the Trump administration. Trump's hair is a tribble. Yes, it is. Musk is also on the spectrum, so social situations are awkward. It's terrible, yes, watching him in these social situations. Elon Musk right now is busy data mining Labour Relations Board so that he can crack down on any Labour unionists. Yes, he's a real advocate for destroying trade unions So he wants to, I think this is what he's doing at the moment, or his minions are doing, is extracting as much data as possible that they can use later on or use against their enemies. Did you see the way Trump spoke to the senator of Maine? No, I didn't see that, but I will check it out after. Trump's hair is like a barbershop flower. If you don't have it, just embrace it, okay? Embrace the reality. Don't try and fake it. I think, no offense, but I think it's pretty awkward seeing people who are much older than me, who are obviously grey, but they've dyed it with boot polish or something, and it looks just really weird. Or like Donald Trump, it looks like a tribble. And wear hats on stream. Yes, yes. It covers it up. It covers it up. Like hair like yellow smoke. Anyway, let's move on to a story related to this. The White House is broken. The White House is completely broken because. Have a listen to this.
I'm curious, with Harvard, we saw the Trump administration today announced it's cutting around $2 billion, or freezing $2 billion in funds to Harvard because the campus has serious problems with violence and with anti-Semitism. We saw a president.
Okay. It seems that the Trump administration has decided that people who are allowed into the White House, into the Oval Office to ask questions, are not actually journalists. They're just hacks. They're people who have podcasts. They're people like me, okay, not journalists. But what you should have in the White House, in the Oval Office, is actual journalists who will grill the I was going to say the Prime Minister, but grill the president to ask him serious questions, instead of people who are launching softballs at him, or people who are just there to promote propaganda. And this is a real, like, the AP, the Associated Press, has been banned from the White House. They're not allowed back in to ask questions because obviously they ask difficult questions that Donald Trump doesn't know the answer to, and expose his incompetence.
Former President Obama signed the campus.
So this guy is saying, this guy is supposed to be a journalist, and he's saying, well, there's a campus, there's the Columbia campus where there's anti-Semitism. There isn't any anti-Semitism. There are anti-Israel protests, but now that's regarded as anti-Semitism, and that's why the Donald Trump administration is cutting funding for these universities.
Has serious problems with violence and with anti-Semitism. We saw former President Obama, side with Harvard, which rejected the Trump administration's demands. I'm curious, where does the administration see this going with Harvard and with other colleges and universities in America that are refusing to reform in wake of the sort of craziness that we've seen take over some of them?
What sort of question is that? They won't reform and deal with the craziness. This is supposed to be a journalist. Obviously, he's not a journalist.
Thank you, Matt, for being here, and thanks for the question. When it comes to Harvard, the president's position on this is grounded in common sense. In the base.
What is the point of all of this? I'm not even going to show the rest of the video because it's completely pointless. You have these individuals who ask questions, and then you have the spokesperson for the White House who just regurgitates talking points, doesn't answer questions. What is the point of it? Honestly, what is the point? It's like PMQs, okay? The Prime Minister stands up, says some stuff, somebody asks the question is not answered, and then we move on to the next point. It's basically like PMQs, but PMQs on steroids, because these people, their job is just to pump out propaganda. It's not actually to answer questions. It's not actually to answer critical questions, because, well, there are no critical questions, because those who ask those questions are no longer allowed into the room. So you're just in a situation where you have Trump sycophants asking questions to Trump sycophants who regurgitate Trump talking points. What is the point of that? Levitt is Goebbels at this point. Yes. There is no criticism of the government. There is no holding the government to account. The point of the media is supposed to hold the government to account, to challenge them. because the government are elected to represent the people. But they're not doing that. Donald Trump is not representing the people. He's representing himself and the people around him, those being the multimillionaires and billionaires, primarily billionaires. That's who Donald Trump represents. He's making decisions that will impact ordinary people's lives, and journalists are not allowed into the room to ask about those decisions. So what's the point in holding a press conference? Well, the point of it is just to pump out more propaganda. Donald Trump is doing a wonderful job. Donald Trump is fighting hard every day. Donald Trump isn't playing golf every other day. Donald Trump is fighting for the American worker. He's bringing back manufacturing. The tariffs are wonderful. The tariffs, we should increase the tariffs. No, we should decrease the tariffs. China is the enemy. The EU is destroying America, or was set up to destroy America. Canada is the 51st state. You can list them off. It's just propaganda. And you have this Barbie who's there just to pump out more propaganda. I would love to see an interview with her when she's kicked out, when she's fired, because she will mess up. They always do. And she's no longer connected to the politics. Like, what will she say? I would love to know. I would love to sit down with some of these people, when the cameras are away and it's not about politics, and say, like, why do you do this? They'd probably say, because it pays well. It's a job. It's like selling double glazed windows. I don't believe that it's good, but that's my job. My job is to lie to the public, is to sell a product. This is the way they, this is their compartmentalization. Am I saying it right? Compartmentalization of I'm thinking in Italian, of this. You put it in a box and you say, okay, this is my job. My job is to sell stuff that I would never buy. Okay. It's complete and utter tripe. It's a complete and utter tat. I would never buy such rubbish, but my job is to sell it to the public and sell it as the greatest thing since sliced bread. I can't do that. I would not be able to sell things that I could not. I've tried in the past. I'm not going to go into that now, but I have tried in the past, but I couldn't do it. I was like, I told my boss, I can't sell this. If I don't believe in it, I can't sell it. Freckle Punny, thank you so much for that super chat. Arriving in 2027, White House, down, clown, frown, brown. Thanks for that. Why don't you wear a suit? I don't wear a suit, no. I'm like Zelensky, or Kid Rock, or Hulk Hogan. Didn't he appear in the White House Oval Office as well? In my opinion, she would be the same. Max, she was handpicked for the job. You're probably right, Alistair. I'm glad your channel is getting international support. Thank you very much for that nice comment, Genghis. Great to see you on the stream. Getting a lot more Americans on the show and also on the channel, and others from around Europe and around the world. It's great to see all of you. Trying to cover more topics as well, because it's I don't want it to be just Brexit based or UK based or just Trump based. But unfortunately, Trump is sucking all the oxygen out of the room at the moment. And I think it's important because what's happening in the US is impacting us all. The old saying, when the US sneezes, we all catch cold. And what Donald Trump is doing, and it's not just about the tariffs, it's not just economics. Canada, great to see you, Canada. Blame Canada. No, I'm joking. But it's not just the tariffs, it's also the rhetoric, it's also the culture war stuff. The Tories are trying to import the culture wars from the US. Other countries around Europe are the right-wing parties are trying to import the culture war crap as well. And we have to stand up to it. We have to call it out. And, it's really disheartening where you hear friends or family starting to regurgitate some of these talking points. So I think it's important that we stand up to that and call it out. Max, could you cover Canada? Paul Villiers is one of the most insufferable populist types. I heard he's like they describe him as the Canadian Trump, although he doesn't like to be called that. He's not doing very well. Hopefully, Carney will win the election, and you'll have a safe pair of hands going forward. So I'm going to cheer on Carney all day long because, and he's somebody. I was reading a thread on Twitter about how he has been doing a lot of stuff for Canada behind the scenes, and not in your face sort of stuff, to protect Canada when it comes to trade and when it comes to the economy. So he has a lot on his shoulders, and but I think he's the right person for that job. He's not a populist. He probably has his own faults, and I don't know him that well, so Canadians would know him a lot better than I do. But from this side of the pond, yeah, it's great that Carney is in charge, and he's somebody that Europe can work with. He's somebody the UK can work with, and I think he would do his best for the Canadians, and that's what you need at the moment. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult time going forward because you're so embedded in the US economy. You have so much trade with the US, and alike in Europe, people live in one state, one country, and they work in the other country. You have people crossing the border every day for their jobs, for school, for education, for family, for relatives. You visit family and relatives across the border. So this is, this is something that will have to be resolved, and it's important that you have somebody in charge who's able to stand up to Trump. And I think the Conservative in Canada would not be capable of doing that. He's probably too much, too close to Trump. I see a free trade agreement with the UK, Canada, and the EU in the near future. Yes, so there is. I don't know about free trade agreement, but definitely better cooperation taking place, and it's already beginning. So that's a good sign. Will you go to Canada for your next holiday? I would love to visit Canada. I visited Canada many years ago, but I just stopped in. I think it was in Quebec on the way to the US. So it was with Air Canada, and we had to land in, I think it was Quebec, many years ago. But I'd love to. I want to visit King William Island. I don't know if anyone in Canada recognizes what I'm talking about there. I would love to visit King William Island because of the terror and the Erebus. They were wrecked. I'm a huge fan. Do I have it? Yes. No, I don't have the book here, but I have this book, Kingdom of Ice. This is more in Siberia, but people who know about King William Island will know about what I'm talking about. So I'd love to visit. It's very difficult to get there. You have to take like 4 flights. You have to fly, I think, to Vancouver maybe, or to Quebec, and then you have to take another flight to another place, and then another place, and you have to take a turboprop plane to King William Island. But it's I would love to cross it. I would love to hike across King William Island. Anyway, let's. We're almost at the end of the stream. I got a bit sidetracked there, but I love talking about these things. Just on the last bit on El Salvador, before we finish this final one, I wanted to cover
there and demand his release.
Well, good luck with that.
So I believe a Democratic member of Congress is planning to travel to El Salvador and demand the release of a man called Garcia, who's at the center of this, who was arrested by the US police, or ICE, I believe, and deported immediately to... He didn't commit any crime. He was immediately deported without due process to El Salvador, and now he's in a prison in El Salvador, in the infamous prison in El Salvador. A member of the US Congress, a Democrat, is planning to go to El Salvador and demand his release. Now that's going to be really interesting. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. It's going to highlight this issue. But of course, what the Trump administration has been doing is they've been avoiding bringing this guy back. They've been claiming, oh, no, we don't have to, or we can't find him, or some other rubbish like that.
There and demand his release.
Well, good luck with that. Carolyn Levin's exactly right. Every time I read a story about this, it's Maryland father. They don't mention he's a member of MS-13, who is not...
He's not a member of MS-13. But also this point of sending people was to do with another gang, nothing to do with MS-13. And like you being a member of MS-13 does not give the US government the right to deport people without due process. There's no evidence that this guy was a member of a gang. He actually arrived in the US to claim asylum to avoid gangs because his life was threatened by gangs in El Salvador.
Designated terrorist group, one of the most violent gangs in the world. They don't mention he's an MS-13 member. They don't mention he's an El Salvadoran citizen being held by the country of El Salvador.
He was deported illegally by the US. What they're trying to do here, can't AOC help this man? I don't know what she can do. She could try and travel there as well. But I don't think it'd be a good idea to send too many Democrats there because, Trump may say, well, just arrest these people there as well and put them in the prison. So, I don't think it would be a good idea for too many US citizens to travel to El Salvador to protest this because they could end up in prison. And who's this idiot? He is the border czar, Trump's border czar, this guy. I forget what his name is.
El Salvador makes that decision. Now the courts said we got to facilitate. We'll facilitate, but El Salvador has full authority on this.
El Salvador is a client state at the moment. You have the power to demand this guy's return. Tom Holman. Okay. Rumors he died, Max, not confirmed. Gang got to him. I hope that's not true, Alistair. I truly hope that's not true. US citizens next. This is the goal. The goal is US citizens next. Donald Trump has even said it. He said he wants to deport. He wants to deport homegrown criminals. Now, Donald Trump has mentioned some examples of people within the US he wants to deport. For example, people who push others in front of trains or hit old people over the head with a baseball bat. But the law doesn't say you can be deported if you hit people with a baseball bat. That's not how it works. There won't be. These are the people who hit each other with baseball bats or hit somebody with a baseball bat or do this type of crime will be deported. No, it will be, well, have you committed a crime? Any crime. It doesn't have to be a violent crime. And then if the Trump administration is sending people by accident, according to them, and not returning them, even though the Supreme Court has demanded that this happen, thanks Alistair for that, even if the Supreme Court demands that they do this and they're not doing it, then what's to stop Donald Trump from saying, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, what's to stop Donald Trump from taking a member of Congress and deporting them as well? There will be an uproar, but what within the law, is there anything to stop Donald Trump from doing that? That's an honest question. Could Donald Trump pick anyone, a member of Congress, somebody high profile, a member of Congress he doesn't like, and deport this person to El Salvador? Yes. There's nothing to stop him from doing that. If the Supreme Court says he shouldn't do it and he does it, then there's nothing that because the Supreme Court is supposed to be a check on the president. If the Supreme Court is no longer a check on the president, then you don't have a democracy, you have a dictatorship. Now, was anyone able to stand up to Hitler and survive? Were they able to remove him? Some people tried. They didn't have a very good end. But when it comes to Donald Trump, no one can... If Donald Trump wanted to deport a member of the US Congress tomorrow, he could do it. The US Supreme Court could say you can't do that, but if he ignores the Supreme Court, we're in uncharted territory here. The founding fathers didn't understand people like Donald Trump. They didn't think somebody like that would come along. Biden, Obama, yes. There's nothing stopping Donald Trump from arresting Barack Obama or Joe Biden and deporting them to El Salvador. Nothing. I'm not being hyperbolic. Von Stauffenberg, yes. But I'm not saying something, like we're now in a situation where Donald Trump could literally order the arrest of Joe Biden and have him deported to El Salvador. Because the rule of law no longer exists. What I find so funny about Brexiteers and people on the right in the UK is that they will say, we don't need the European Convention on Human Rights. We have, I trust in Robert Jenrick. I trust in Nigel Farage to protect my rights. Well, here we have a US president ignoring the Supreme Court. At least with the European Convention on Human Rights, there's an external court that the UK should respect. Now, the UK could ignore it, I guess. But at least you'd have an external court. Here, there is nothing above the US Supreme Court. So Donald Trump, at the moment, is ignoring a ruling from the US Supreme Court, a 9-0 ruling. So what's to stop Donald Trump from, as was pointed out in chat, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump could literally arrest Hillary Clinton tomorrow, tonight, send ICE agents to her house, have her arrested, put on a plane and sent to El Salvador to be forgotten about. And no one could do anything about it. Reform would break us from everything. Yes, they would. Out of the EU, no longer the EU, out of the United Nations, out of the World Trade Organization, out of the World Health Organization, just like Trump. Trump is, you see it first in the United States, the culture war stuff, Fox News type stuff, all of this was imported from the US. And Nigel Farage understands how he can use this to his advantage. Trump could literally lock her up. Yes, he could. And the Supreme Court could do nothing about it. Now, the Supreme Court technically can deputize people, can say, okay, you're a deputy and you have to go and arrest the president. But, from a practical point of view, it's a bit difficult to do that because the US Marshals are believed to be under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, but they follow the direction of the Department of Justice. And what's her name? Pam something, whatever her name is a Trumpist, is in charge of, is the Attorney General. So, is the head of the Justice Department. Bondi. Yeah, so she's not going to allow the Supreme Court to appoint or to send US Marshals to arrest Donald Trump for breaking the law. There's only one way out of this. I'm sorry to say, but it's a military coup. Like, if Donald Trump is not reined in by his party, then the only way will be, because there's nothing stopping Donald Trump from saying, well, we're not going to have any elections. Because if the Supreme Court say, well, there's nothing we can do, what's to stop Donald Trump from saying we're not going to have elections? Or we're going to have elections, but I will win by 99%, like in Syria or like in Russia. My name will be on the ballot, but nobody else's name will be on the ballot. Or the name on the ballot will be somebody I choose. Like, what's to stop that from happening? I'm not saying it is going to happen, and I hope it doesn't, but there's nothing to stop at the moment Donald Trump from doing these things. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Thanks so much for your support. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. But before we finish, we have our one for the road. So I hope you enjoy this clip.
As Marine Le Pen announces she will appeal her sentence which banned her from running for office for the next 5 years, we ask, should the courts get involved in politics? Our bang 'em up, let 'em off, or give 'em a chance correspondent Jonathan Goodenough has more. Yes, that's right, Marine Le Pen is just the latest French politician to get into legal trouble, following predecessors such as Nicolas Sarkozy or Jacques Chirac, but this time is different. In what way? Well, they both had a chance to be president before they were convicted. She hasn't had her go yet. Her go. Yes, commentators across the world have confidently predicted that Le Pen would win the next election in 2027, so this has really bummed them out. But she did commit a crime. Is embezzling funds from the EU really a crime? Well, yes. But a lot of people don't like the EU. In fact, in this country, people voted to leave it, which has been a stunning success. The point is, she's probably more popular than the EU, so why should she be punished for that? She's not. She's being punished for breaking the law. Is she? Or is she being punished for being right-wing? Well, Chirac and Sarkozy were both right-wing. No, really right-wing. You mean far-right, really right-wing. The point is, this is becoming a pattern. Really right-wing, far-right, really right-wing leaders across the world are being increasingly targeted by left-wing legal systems because their ideas about woke or immigration are becoming increasingly popular. But mostly because they've committed crimes. They would argue they're merely representing the will of the people, and that by targeting them with legal cases, the system is deliberately trying to keep those people down. Right. Just look at Donald Trump. His popularity actually rose after he was targeted with lawfare, and the fact that he was elected shows that he wasn't guilty of any of it anyway. What? Why? Because being elected President of the United States is the biggest get-out-of-jail-free card in the world, and the people wouldn't have given it to him if they'd really thought he was a criminal. So you're saying if you're popular enough, you should never be charged with a crime. If you're popular enough with the right people. The right people? The really right people. But surely no one is above the law. Well, that sounds great in principle, but think of it like this. If there's a popular leader who commits a crime and is sent to prison, that gives him a chance to be a martyr. Then when he's in prison, he'll become even more popular. You're thinking of someone like Adolf Hitler. Exactly. Much better to let him take power immediately before he builds up any more resentments. Or you could punish him properly and ban him from running because criminals shouldn't be in power and fascism is bad whatever form it takes. That doesn't sound very popular. The law isn't about being popular. Who gets to make the laws, though? The most popular people. Just a thought. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as the nation survives another April Fool's Day unscathed, we'll take you back through some of the most unbelievable stories from yesterday that you probably thought were jokes, but are in fact all too real.
Guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and good night.